Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer.
But who is he?
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer.
And who is he?
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer.
And what he do?
And he's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, board-certified criminal defense lawyer, and today we are reacting to the news that the trial for YNW Melly begins actually yesterday with jury selection. But before we get to that, remember, this is brought to you by eSign.com, of course. eSign.com. eSign.com is a very effective way to remotely do business. Let's say, for example, you are a huge lawyer and you're on the Dr. Phil show all the time and you go all over the place and you really don't have time to, have somebody sign a new document. What you do is just, and I'm speaking about Bradford, he's one of his lawyers. So what you do is you just, you download the app, you get 3 free signatures a month, and you just have them sign a remote document. But it's not just for that. You could use it for power of attorney, rental agreement, sales agreement, any kind of thing where you need a signature, you need to do business rather remotely, effectively, or just quickly. I use it all the time when I have somebody do a retainer agreement when they're out of town or if they just can't make it into the office. And when you do that, you're able to secure business in the moment. And I use it all the time, so I highly recommend using eSign.com. We're on to Jamel Demons, a.k.a. YNW Melly, and YNW Bortland. So let's just kind of trace the steps where we came from. Melly was charged with the 2018 death of 2 people, Anthony Williams and Christopher Thomas, a.k.a. YNW Sack Chaser and a.k.a. YNW Juvie. They were killed on October 26, 2018. Now, if you remember, Bortland shows up to the ER with these 2 people riddled with bullets. And he told the ER staff that they were on the road and there was a drive-by. And curiously enough, Melly wasn't with them. Well, they did forensics, they had phones, data, and they were able to determine exactly where they were and when the vehicle stopped. And the thing about it is they can tell your speed on the way to the hospital. Well, based upon the trajectory of the bullets, they could tell that the bullets came from a different part of the car. And the trajectory differed from what their wounds were, which is a big, big, big deal in this case. So why is it taking, we're out 5 years. We're at 4.5 years. Why is it taking 4.5 years to get to trial? Well, one of the things that happened here is, first of all, on a death penalty case, and that's what this is, it's going to take a while to get to trial anyway. It's a first-degree murder case, double homicide, and he's looking at the death penalty. Well, what happened was the defense filed there was a superseding indictment, and in the superseding indictment, they didn't give notice of the death penalty, but they had in the prior indictment. The lawyers from Melly filed a motion to exclude the death penalty or to get rid of the death penalty because they said they didn't get proper notice. And the judge said agreed, and the judge threw out the death penalty. Well, then the state then filed a motion, an interlocutory appeal. What that means is while the thing's pending, they filed an appeal to overturn the judge. And the Court of Appeals on November 9th said, no, we're reinstating the death penalty, and here's why. So then Melly's lawyers filed an appeal to the state Supreme Court, and the state Supreme Court refused to hear it. So what does that mean when a court refuses to hear? You go up to the Supremes. So you got 3 levels. You got the District Court, Court of Appeals, and the Supremes, okay? So the District Court makes a ruling. You don't like it, go to the Court of Appeals. You don't like that, you go to the Supremes. If the Supremes don't hear it, which they decline to hear it, then the ruling at the Court of Appeals is the law of the case. And in this case, the death penalty is now in play. What does the death penalty mean for Melly? It means that it has to be sort of gang-related. That's the aggravating factor. If, for example, it turns out that this is just a dispute about money between the parties and you really can't say that it was for the benefit of a gang, I think that the death penalty might come off the table. That could be one way to win this case for the defense. Situation now is that, okay, now they're going to go into jury selection. Jury selection is going to last probably a month, 3 weeks, 3-4 weeks at the minimum, I would guess. This is a very high-profile case, but I would argue that it is while it is a high-profile case, I bet your average mom and pop who sit on a jury, your suburban housewife, your engineer that is at whatever, just the average people who get these jury notices. I don't think that they're going to be all that familiar with the case. It's languished out there for a while, so it hasn't really been in the headlines. But nevertheless, they're going to go through this process. And generally speaking, when I've tried to murder one, they do it one at a time. They bring one juror in at a time, and they usually have a jury questionnaire. And I would expect it to be fairly lengthy, and so you get these jury questionnaires that have all kinds of information about the people who are potential jurors. So you get their age, their occupation, their spouse's occupation, whether they have children or not, their education, what they like to do in their spare time, if they've had any trauma, and in this case, if they've had any kind of murder or assault types, either been accused of it or been a victim of it, or had anybody close to them been a victim of it, and if there's anything else that would prevent them from serving as a juror on the case. And so you get just a stack of these things, and then you get two types of strikes. You have an unlimited number of strikes for cause, and that means if somebody just can't be fair, because you ask the juries all kinds of questions like, do you have an affinity for police? Is there a reason that you would believe a police officer over a lay witness just because they are wearing a badge and carry a gun? Those kinds of things. And if they say, oh yeah, I work for the district attorney's office, or I'm friends with a district attorney, or I just don't like rappers and I can't be fair. You have an unlimited number of strikes for cause. How many jurors are there? There are 12 jurors. 12 jurors with usually a couple alternates. In this case, I would think they'd want at least 2 or more alternates. The alternates are there in the case that somebody gets sick, or somebody tweets something, or in case somebody misbehaves in the jury and gets kicked off for whatever reason. If they get to the end of the case and they don't need an alternate, they don't sit in on the deliberations. So remember the mechanics of this case. You've got Bortland as the driver, Sack Chaser is in the front passenger seat, Melly's in the driver's side rear seat, and you got Juvie, he's in the rear passenger seat on the passenger side. If you look at this, where these people were shot and the bullet wound and the bullet holes in the car are two totally separate events. Because if you remember from the videos that we did prior, and you know what, we'll put a little bit of that in here so that you can kind of get a more of a bird's eye view of what the case is really about. And I'm kind of going through it fairly quickly. I'm going to tell you about what the process is that he's going to go through and what things kind of look like for him, okay? First, he and Cortland Henry and 2 other people, Anthony Williams and Christopher Thomas, were in a vehicle. And they left a recording studio. They went to a side of the road. Williams and Thomas were murdered. They were shot multiple times. Henry brings them to the hospital. Okay, and Melly takes off. An investigation ensues after that. Both Henry and Mr. Demons, Melly, get charged with murder in the first degree. Capital murder. Now, what is some of the evidence that they've gone over? They've got tower records, cell phone tower records. They've got camera footage. They got forensic evidence showing the trajectory of the bullets, both in the bodies and in the vehicle itself. They've got a canine search where they went to the scene and they collected evidence. They found 8 .40 caliber shell casings. That'll be important in a second when I tell you. Then they also found shards of glass at the scene consistent with the vehicle that they were in. They also know that the vehicle was alone and did a U-turn, and I'll tell you how they figured that out in a minute. And they show that the trajectory of the shots came from left to right, and the trajectory of the shots that were on the outside of the car were right to left. So it's completely contrary to things that some of the people said. What we have here is a case that's going to trial, and one key thing that is, I think, the most important piece of evidence in this case, the wounds for Sack Chaser and Juvie come from left to right. The bullet holes in the vehicle come from right to left. So when you have what did they do? They basically made it staged. You're going to have forensic in terms of the bodies in their injuries. You're going to have forensics in terms of trajectory of the firearms, the projectiles. You're going to have forensic in the term of the digital footprint of where these guys were and what they were going. And then you're also going to have probably some testimony about what this dispute was all about. And whether it's gang related or rap related, remember, they were all coming from a studio. It was shortly after that that these two young men were killed. So that's what the trial's about. And, we'll follow it as it goes. But jury selection is going to be a slog. So it's going to take a few weeks. We won't know much. I don't believe it's going to be televised. So we'll just have to catch the news as it comes, and we'll give you the analysis from a board-certified criminal defense lawyer. So this has just been our reaction to YNW Melly. And, in fact, if you remember, Melly was our very first video that we did, Murder on My Mind. That's how long this has been. It's been a long time since it's almost 5 years since this happened. So we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Make sure you subscribe, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, sign up for Patreon, and we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts.
Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away. Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away. 23-hour lockdown, police is at my god.